Manolo Concepcion. I am the new associate head coach at Eastern Illinois University. I'm here in Illinois, USA. I was born and raised in Toa Baja, Puerto Rico, where I had the unfortunate enough to coach at every level there, including the Pro League. Now I have been relocated into the US, where I have coached in the junior college level and NCAA Division I. And throughout this crisis, one of the missions that I had was to try to build a platform where we can continue to educate ourselves by learning from other people's experiences and backgrounds, and trying to keep volleyball alive throughout this huge pandemic, and maybe find some distraction and happiness throughout the way by talking about the game that we love. Today, I am honored to have one of the best people and coaches in the NCAA Division I, Christy Johnson-Lynch, head volleyball coach at Iowa State University. How are you, Christy?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is pretty cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And I want to first ask you, as someone that has been president of the AVCA already, what's your take on what's going on with the crisis and how it is affecting the game?
Oh gosh, there's obviously a lot happening. Unfortunately, I think the big word that comes to mind is the unknowns. We all are trying to figure out or make, I think, contingency plans if the fall season should change drastically. At the same time, it's hard to get too deep into planning if you don't really know what we're going to be dealing with. It's hard because, you have the NCAA, but a lot of us first have to deal with our own athletic departments and our own universities. That's a huge one. What is your university going to do? And what's your governor going to do? What's your conference going to do? So, I find it really challenging to figure out, the NCAA may allow something, but my university says no, or my conference says no. So,
as the former president of the AVCA, like what are they going through right now? Like who are the people like involved in the decision making of maybe talking to the NCAA and trying to figure something out? Like what are things that they're doing with right now?
Well, I think the AVCA, and I don't want to speak for them, I'm not on that board anymore, but I think the hope is that the AVCA will have take a leadership position and have an opinion, try to protect the sport. I think the feeling is we want to have a season, and however we have to do that, let's do that. So it's late, if it's shortened, if it's, regional, let's have a season, let's have a championship. Again, even if the championship looks way different than it has before, if it has to be regionalized, whatever we got to do to try to have a season. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to give up too much, or, just already make these plans and just give up on and give people an excuse to cut budgets or cut coaches. So I think it's a little bit of a balance. Protect the sport. We're going to have to be flexible. And I think the AVCA is just trying to help coaches navigate that and also, show some leadership, be a go-between between the volleyball and the NCAA.
It's definitely worrisome, to see and take in consideration that March Madness didn't happen. Football might not happen or it would. But, sports that might affect us tremendously and what we would end up doing. So, definitely something to worry about, not just for women's volleyball, but men's volleyball even more.
Yep.
I think that is, we're going through, as you said, something uncertain that might affect the sport forever. And hopefully it's not as bad as we think it could be.
Yeah.
How is that affecting your own team? Like, what are things that you're doing with your own team to adapt to this matter?
We're probably doing what a lot of other people are doing. We are doing some team calls, some Zoom calls, every week, trying to stay connected. I'm spending a lot of time on the phone, just one-on-one, making sure that they're okay. And so really focused on connecting with them, one-on-one conversations, a team call every week, trying to encourage them to be motivated in their workouts. So we're making sure they're, they feel good about what they're doing at home, and figuring how to work out, what they could even use at home, trying to get touches. I think the same thing everyone else is doing. And now I'm thinking I got to figure out something better and something new. And, I think the Zoom calls are getting old. So
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out maybe a different way to do it, or how do we want to do it if this goes into the summer? What can we do to keep it fresh?
Just like huddles, that no matter the years of experience as a coach, I don't think any of us have ever, gone through something like this. So the planning goes almost to the drain, because,
Right.
something new that we're dealing every single day, especially with the uncertain moving on. But something that you have been known forever, Christy, is your ability to motivate others. So I wonder how much your background had to do with that. And can you take me back to your days in Omaha, Nebraska? Like what made you this great motivator that you are today? Like how did everything start?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I don't know if I'm that great at it, but I think first I start from, I think I was a pretty just self-motivated person growing up. And so I kind of come into that with an expectation that, you're going to, largely this is going to be about you, taking charge of it. So one is I really start from make sure you're taking charge of your own development, even though I can help. I really encourage players to take charge of it themselves. Don't point fingers. Don't expect your coaches to solve your problems for you. Let's make sure we have an understanding that your career, whether you're a player or a staff member, it's really going to be about you and what you're willing to do.
That intrinsic motivation. Do you have that as a setter? When you play at Nebraska, talk to me about like what kind of player were you?
I think I was pretty highly self-motivated. But I think I had a lot of trials as a player. So I grew a lot. I had to really figure some stuff out for myself. So, when I came into Nebraska, I was right behind another great setter. So I didn't play. I sat the bench. I gave it my all to try to beat her out. I gave it everything I had my second year, and I still didn't beat her out. So, that going through all of that was really hard, but valuable. Then my coach, Terry Pettit, suggested I redshirt. So I really didn't become a starter until my fourth year in the program. So that whole journey was huge. I mean, I don't think I achieved what I achieved. I don't know if I'm the person I am if I hadn't gone through that like really tough struggle. So that tough times taught me a lot, and taught me to persevere, and just a lot of things. And finally got to play my junior year and senior year. And then I was very fortunate to be on a really good team. I think I was a good setter, but I had really talented people around me that, had I not been on that team, I don't know that anyone would have thought I was that great of a setter. I was really lucky to have great passers and players and hitters and ball handling and all that stuff that kind of makes it go.
This video is from YouTube, of course. This is you killing it at Nebraska. I think that one of my favorite qualities that I saw in video from you, first of all, your set release, always on the same place, around 45 degrees, great location and consistency. You seem to actually control the game really well, and the players around you, and they seem to trust you a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you have that because of all the struggles that you went through to actually finally be the starter? Like, how do you earn that kind of respect that everyone seemed to have, when you control the game?
Yeah, like I said, it was such a process. When I came in as a freshman, I didn't have a clue, and I was just along for the ride. And you know, didn't really know that much about being a leader. Or, I mean, of course I had some of those skills, and I had tremendous high school and club coaches, but yet it's a really long process when you're in college, from when I first came in to being a junior and senior. So one is, I think, just technically, I had really good coaches in high school and club, and then my college coaches were very good. So I didn't have much to worry about. You know, I had just set so much, I could kind of put the ball where I wanted it to go. And I think I understood the game pretty well, just because I had played a lot of volleyball. But the leadership part, I had to work at. You know, I really worked hard at trying to be the kind of player that could handle the pressure, that could make really good decisions, that could kind of be there in the clutch time. I wasn't always that player. I had to really work at it.
Can you tell
earn
me
that trust?
Can you tell me what the person in the screen right now means to you? And who's that person, and what does he mean to you?
Yeah. Just lots of words come to mind. I mean, he's a great friend to me now, even now, today. We talk quite a bit. He's a genius. You know, he's just the way he sees the game, I mean, he can watch someone do something a couple times and then tell you what they need to change or tell you what they need to do. So he's a genius the way he thinks about volleyball and can see it. You know, when I think of my time at Nebraska, my time with him, it's not so much the technical stuff. It's the mental stuff, the decision-making, the handling the pressure, the being, you know, a great leader. I think that's what I learned from him, and really, really glad I got that opportunity to play for him.
In that type of game that we live in during those generations, like, what were the important matters for someone like him, like Terry Pettit? Like, what were things that were really important in relation to winning and in relation of building a culture?
I think first of all, with the team, he kind of had his non-negotiables, you know, like, you just knew if you weren't willing to do some things, you weren't going to make it. You might as well cut out now. Yeah. So, I mean, he was somewhat demanding that way. I think you kind of knew where he stood, and there were just certain behaviors he expected. Bigger picture, I think it was really important to him to fight for female athletes, for women's sports, and for volleyball. You know, I think he was very much about that.
He still does. Still does.
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, I don't know if I really appreciated it at the time, but he fought for us. He fought for us big time, and he fought for us in facilities, in budget, in the way we were treated, travel, you know, the respect, fans. You know, he was fighting that fight. I don't know if we all realized that, but he was a big part of, I think, just nationally getting volleyball, you know, gaining prominence.
Did he have a lot to do with you wanting to become a coach? Like, what got you starting in that?
I honestly just happened into coaching. Didn't have a plan. I was teaching math. That was my major, and I was teaching math at my old high school. And I got a call from John Cook, kind of out of the blue, who was at Wisconsin at the time, to see if I want to interview for a job. And I thought, I don't know, sure. So I got the job, and I loved it. I loved it immediately. Just loved the lifestyle, and being in college again, and being around those people, and being around volleyball all day. I just loved it. So I happened into it, but so grateful I did. I'm so grateful John called me that day, because, you know, changed the course of my life for sure.
Then you have John Cook and then Pete Wade as two people that you work mainly with. What do you take from each of them to become the coach, you know, that you later become? What are the biggest stakes from each of them?
They're so different. So it was so interesting to go from one to the other. I mean, they probably couldn't be more different in terms of how they lead their programs. It's not better or worse. It's absolutely just different people. So it was cool for me to see that, because I think it's really important for assistant coaches to get, you know, see how different people are able to be great in different ways. It was really valuable for me to say, okay, I could do it this way. I could do this that way. I could, you know, kind of pick and choose. You know, John was so, and is still so passionate about what he's doing. I mean, he's a grinder. He will outlast you and, you know, outwork you. And just watching him go, you know, do this profession so with so much passion, day after day after day in that grind, I thought that was amazing to see someone build a program and work at a program like that. Pete was so much about people. You know, he was just really generous with his time and really patient, and you know, just had a way of making you feel like, you know, everything's gonna be okay, and just a really I don't know, just compassionate person, and had great relationships with his staff and players. So, and John did too, and Pete was incredibly passionate as well. They just, I think, expressed it in different ways. So I learned a ton from them about how to run a program, how to manage players. They allowed me and empowered me to feel ready to take a head job when it was my time. Absolutely.
And then you went to Iowa State, and a program that had maybe 3 20-win seasons before you got there, and then you go crazy and then start winning and winning and winning, and, you know, into the program that it is today. Well, you know, did you know coming in that, you know, that you had a formula for what was going on, or what was your initial reaction to what you actually found at Iowa State?
Mm-hmm. It's so funny because I had no plan. You know, I was very naive. I thought, honestly, I just thought, we'll just go and see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that was very much my attitude. I think it was good that I was kind of younger and inexperienced, because I didn't know what I didn't know. You know, I didn't really think like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard to do. It was just kind of like, this sounds fun. It's in the Big 12. I really liked the school. You know, I just thought, I took the job because I felt like I could win there. We could figure out a way to win. It was in the Midwest. It was in the Big 12. You know, I didn't really think that much more about it than that. Didn't really have much of a plan. But as we were here and as we got into it, then I started to figure out a plan. And then I started to figure out what we could be really good at. You know, I knew it would be hard to be good at lots of things, and I felt like we'd have to kind of find our niche, like what specifically could we be really good at. You know, we kind of figured that out a little bit by chance, and then we focused on that. And so we don't try to recruit all over the country. We don't try to be good at everything. We try to be really good at a few specific things, and that formula has seemed to work for us.
You mentioned an aspect about not knowing what you didn't know. Now that you know what you don't know, how important is that in order for you to establish priorities?
Well, at some point, I think you have to come to some standards and ideas about what you want to be about. I guess you don't want to be kind of haphazard, and, you know, I think having a plan is valuable. And by that, I mean, for us, for our plan, at one point I sat down and said, you know, not just for volleyball, but for marketing, for tickets, for our facilities, for how we're traveling, like we had to kind of figure that out too. Again, when I came in, I didn't ask for anything. You know, some coaches, you know, I want a bigger budget. We need to have this. And I just like, hey, you offered me a job. Awesome. Yeah. But then when we got in, it's like, okay, I need to start making some decisions and be kind of showing some leadership. I can't just kind of do whatever. I have to have a long-term plan for where this program's going to go. So we started, you know, being strategic about, do we need a director of operations? You know, is that priority? Do we need to fly differently or, you know, change our travel budget? Do we need to be able to recruit internationally? You know, I do think at some point I had to figure out, this is our priorities. This is what we're going to be about. Make sure everybody knows it. It's, you know, not just me knowing it, but my staff, but like I said, my support staff, my marketing person, my administrator, everybody kind of needs to know what we're about, what our goals are, have an idea of what this long-term plan is, so we have a direction and we're not just all kind of doing our own thing.
That's the operational part. How do you build the winning habits in the locker room? You know, what was the key Christy, to then start that trend and say, this is the stamp that I'm going to put, and this is the culture that I want to build from within?
Yep. You know, for me, it's kind of simple. We wanted to just recruit the players we felt like could be successful here. And that's, for us, it just meant really good athletes who we think have a good work ethic, you know, who will get to work when they get here. So we, you know, it started with recruiting. You know, we had some really nice players in the program, so let's keep developing them, and then let's add to that some really good athletes. And then really besides that, it was about work hard, you know, work really hard. And there were some players that probably didn't, I would say, weren't really willing to do that. And that's fine, but you're probably not going to get much playing time, and you're probably going to be sitting, you know, maybe on the second side, or, you know, you won't have a role. And if you're okay with that, then all right. But we tried to focus on effort, especially initially. You know, I wasn't a big stat person, or it really wasn't, you know, we didn't have anyone to stat our practices. We didn't have a cauldron. We didn't have any resources, you know. It was just, okay, who's working their butt off, and, you know, who's wants to be in this with us. And those people started to really kind of get the program going and be more competitive. And then we found players we could kind of add into the mix that had that same mindset. So I wouldn't say it was very complicated. It's just, you know, we'll work really hard. And if you don't want to do that, then you won't be a part of this, and keep adding to our pool.
Seemed like you actually emphasize on the person itself in the beginning, and trying to see if you can build, you know, the character that you wanted to then, you know, build from there. At what point did you then decided to then introduce your methodology, you know, and then maybe stop compromising on, okay, I don't want a happy medium, this is how things are going to be? Like, well, when was that breaking point that you felt that way?
I don't think there was ever a moment, you know, for me, it's, each season is a little different. Each team is a little different. I mean, we kind of always have the same philosophy of, we're going to work really hard. We're going to get after it defensively. You know, we're going to be a defensive minded team. We're going to go crazy pursuing balls and working really hard defensively. But that's never changed. You know, that's kind of been a constant. And that's, you know, the teams that seem to kind of grab onto that do better. You know, they tend to have better seasons, and we tend to have more success with them. So I can't really think of a season or some time when it went like, oh, there it is, or, oh, we're going to do it this way this year. It's kind of always been that way. It's always been very simple, but it's always been that way. And some teams do better with it than others. But I don't know that we've ever really changed as a staff, or I've ever changed my expectations, or had any aha moments. It's been pretty simple, I think, over the years.
Has your coaching style always been the same, or has it changed throughout time, and what that coaching style is?
I think it's probably changed a little. I don't know that it's changed a lot. And I've probably spent so much time listening to others and listening to, you know, coaching clinics and webinars and podcasts. I'm always really curious about what other people are doing, but yet I think I kind of have always been who I am, and haven't changed very much. I think I have, and probably the area I probably changed the most is just my feeling towards tweaking my coaching towards different players. I have found if I can tweak the way I approach a certain player, I can probably get a little more out of them. And so I've been more open to that. I think maybe earlier in my career, I was like, why am I adjusting to them? They need to adjust to me. And, you know, everyone was kind of the same for everybody. And I have found some really cool moments, maybe changing the way I say something, or a little bit of an approach to a player, and feeling like, oh, this is actually going a lot better. So that's probably the area I've changed the most in, I think.
What challenges do you find yourself on now that you are, you know, in a more separation between the player's age, you know, and where you at this point, you know?
I'm getting old. Is that what you're saying?
We're all getting old in this matter, but like with your experience in the NCAA now, like, are there any challenges that you're experiencing?
For sure. You know, I do think getting older is different. You know, I think and anyone who's moved from assistant to head coach, you'll know what I'm talking about. When you move into that chair, your relationship changes a bit with players. You know, I always felt like and I was younger too. When I was assistant, I was closer to their age, but I always felt like their friend. I always felt like I was the one people would come to. I felt very close to the players when I was an assistant, and somehow, as soon as I became a head coach, no one wanted to talk to me. You know, no one wanted to tell me things. No one wanted to, you know, if they were going to be mad at someone, it was going to be me. So that's a challenge, because I feel like something changed, and I didn't feel like I changed myself, but that is a challenge, I think, to get that relationship with players still, even as a head coach. I think the recruiting is always challenging. You know, this has changed so much in the last 10 years. And so that's trying to keep up and trying to find new ways. And that's really challenging. I think coaching is just getting better and better, you know, and I see it across our conference, across the nation. I think, man, there are just so many great coaches out there. We're better now. We're just better. We're better as a profession than we were, you know, many years ago. So now it's just harder to be good.
You are someone with a math background, you know, you're someone that has an affinity towards numbers. How much you think that not just numbers, but science itself and, you know, and motor learning has influenced the game and maybe the way you approach the game now?
I think it's super interesting. You know, that's probably another area I've changed a bit. Just the understanding motor learning. And I think it's just I just am really intrigued by it. So I love that science has started to come into our sport and has a part. I think you can get too caught up in it for sure. And I've even experimented with my own team, you know, so just as a simple example, you know, I've, you know, was always someone that was, you know, I'm going to hit at a player on the same side of the net and we're going to get after it that way, and do a lot of drills on the same side of the net, coach controlled. And as I learned about motor learning, I thought, well, let's go across the net. Let's make it more game-like. And we went away from some of the things that we had traditionally done. And I thought it actually hurt our defense a little bit, you know, which wasn't supposed to happen. I was making things more game-like. I was, you know, doing it the way I was supposed to be doing it, but it didn't work for us for whatever reason. So as much as I think, you know, the science can have, you know, some good things to say, you have to
it's a balance.
Feel it out yourself. Yeah. You have to figure out what works for you. And you have to figure that out for yourself. I don't think you can read it in a book and assume that it will work for you. And I think the same thing with statistics. You know, I love stats. I am a math person, and I don't know that I have an awesome understanding of it, but I do look at a lot of different stats, and sometimes I just look at them and I think, so what? Because I still got to go back. We still got to be able to pass the ball. So, you know, all this that we're getting into, it's almost too much. It can get to be overwhelming. And then I lose sight of what's important. You know, I get caught up in all this other stuff that probably isn't nearly as important as maybe some of the simple things that we could go back to. So it all has a place. I think you just have to find what works for you, and also, you know, just don't get too caught up in it. You know, it's the game, and it's volleyball.
I have a question. My good friend Hector Hossa Reyes, who is your technical coordinator, describes you as a servant leader, as someone that is really, 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 really kind-hearted, someone really passionate, but also understands how to treat people and get involved into what she wants to achieve. How much of that has actually directly affected positively your team, you know, and what you're building out there? Do they see that and go, you know what, I want to be like my coach? You know,
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. You know, I think with my staff, I'm pretty tight. You know, I spend so much time with them. We spend so much time together that, I really care about them, and it doesn't feel like I'm not working at it. It's just, these are my very close friends and I care a lot about them. And mostly, I think what gives me so much pride and joy is when I see my players and my staff go on and do something really cool. That's kind of the hope. So, I would love for all of my staff to move up the ladder if they want and be in a leadership position themselves. And so I think my job is to help them do that.
And I have seen that. Yeah, I've seen that from your past staff, how everyone has a positive turnover moving on. So it seems like you have a mentorship program, not just with your players, but also with your staff. Like, what kind of advice will you have for coaches out there of how to deal with staff and prepare people like you do on your own?
Yep. I think it helps me to think of it as that is the goal. The goal is for them to move on and do something really cool if they so choose. If they want to stay and be at Iowa State for their whole lives, that's incredible, and I would love that. But I don't want to be selfish or protective. My goal it just gives me great joy for whatever reason. It gives me great joy to help them do that. And so I don't, like, for example, when people leave, take whatever you want, like, because I want to see them succeed. So I'm not protective of that. I really enjoy collaborating. I'm big on that. So I love hearing other people's ideas. I don't care whose idea it is, type thing. Sometimes that gets me into trouble a little bit, but I really like that part of our profession. I like that part of my job.
He also tells me that you are a unifier, that you find ways to get players to realize that they all have something in common, and it's just the end goal. Like, how do you achieve that? Like, what's the approach to get something like that going on?
Well, I think it can be really hard with teams because we have so many players that aren't playing, right? They're either, hopefully they're on their way, but they maybe don't have the role they want yet. So I think that's really, really hard as a coach to do that with the team. I think you just have to talk about it a lot, so that means talking a lot about team first, being selfless, accepting your role, embracing your role, making sure they understand if they don't have the role they want, what needs to happen for them to get that, what do they need to do so that they know I'm working towards something. But I think just talking about that a lot helps. If you ignore it or you aren't clear about what a player is going to have to do to get playing time, they'll kind of break off. They will not be unified. They'll start kind of having their own agenda. So I think we just have to talk about that a lot. I think that alone, I think, solves a lot of problems. if you can keep the team together and even if they don't have the role they want, that they feel like they're working towards making the team better, making themselves better, that they're still an important part of the team, that can solve a lot of problems.
What are your priorities at the time of recruiting, aside from the talent part, and the skill set? Tell me, like, what are things that define someone that you feel that can fit at Iowa State volleyball?
As much as I can, I like to find people that I know can handle some tough adversity. One of my philosophies, one of the things we figured out at Iowa State is that, we're probably not going to jump higher than Texas jumps. We're not going to hit over them. So we better find players that don't mind going up against a bigger block or, going up against a really physical team and are okay playing tough defense, ball handling, using the block, being crafty, just competing. So we better find that in our recruits, because I think it's hard. We can make some gains in that mindset while they're here, but if they don't kind of have that as a core quality, I think it's going to be tough to bring them along. So we're trying to find players that are okay, with adversity. They don't have to be the biggest, tallest, most athletic kid, but if they're competitors, that's going to help us. So we look for that. I try to find low drama,
Christy, do you consider parents now as part of that equation? Like, have you ever said no to a kid because of what you said, like, of what you saw from the parent perspective? Like, how much does that influence your recruiting?
Yeah. Parents for sure. I mean, sometimes on a visit, I've had a couple times, and I wouldn't say, I don't know if a parent has ever just I've said, no, I won't recruit this player because of a parent, because I think you owe it to the kid to evaluate them on their own right. You know, they might be quite different from their mom or dad.
Yeah.
But I for sure had kind of had that feeling as a package, like, there's a lot of red flags here. I think, you know, we better do some more homework, or we might just want to stay away. But I think we are definitely evaluating that for sure. I mean, the way the family interacts usually tells us a lot about how it will go when they get there.
Is the transfer portal helping or damaging the NCAA efforts of retention and probably creating better habits when we talk about recruiting? Like, what are your thoughts about what kind of effect it's having right now?
I don't know yet. I think it makes it easier to leave, because I mean, and I feel that the past, like last fall, I felt like my team was really together and we had a really, you know, great group and everyone was pretty happy. But still, I felt like it's so easy to just put your name in there that I still had that uneasiness that someone's name was just going to go up there and it would surprise me. So, but ironically, in the last couple of years, you know, we've had very few transfers. We might have had more before the portal. So I think that's not enough data. You know, we don't have a lot of data yet. So, you know, I can't say for sure. I think as a coach, it makes me feel more anxious because I feel like it made it a little bit easier. You know, now it almost is exciting now. I can put my name up there and get all these calls from schools.
Free agent.
Yeah. I fear, you know, I have some anxiety about that. On the flip side, I think my staff and we've tried really hard to make sure we are working hard at our relationships with our team members, our players, because I don't want to be surprised. I really don't want to, you know, get a text and say, hey, I'm on the portal. I want to know what's going on with each of those players. So it's, I think, forced us to just be more mindful and more diligent with our relationships with our players.
Let's talk about mindfulness, like developing a growth mindset, emotional intelligence. What are things that your program does to help with that? You know, when the student athlete comes to your program, what are things that help them develop throughout the 4 years, you know, being under your program?
Well, you know, if I like one-on-one. So in other words, you know, we'll do some team stuff, but my favorite part of the job, I think, is sitting with a player, identifying some areas they need to get better at, and then we'll talk through how we're going to do that. So, and again, I think each player is so different that, you know, what works for one player might not work for the next. So I really enjoy that part of coaching, you know, sitting down one-on-one and saying, you know, hey, I know, you know, yesterday when we were in this drill, you were being really stubborn, or, you know, you were not open to trying this, or, you know, whatever it is, but talking through how we're going to get better.
Does that go through role clarity then? Like you are pretty honest with your players, you know, even if it is a hard situation, you know, you are really specific and upfront with their role within the program. Does that help with that, developing that emotional intelligence there?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think I always think more communication's better, and clarity and explaining roles, I think I'm big on that for sure. At the same time, I think coaches, your job is to give them hope, you know, and I'm a big believer in kind of showing them through my experience, what is to come for them. So that means, you know, I have players that come in that just don't have a lot of confidence, or don't see that if I keep working hard in a year or two, I'm going to be a player. But I can see it because I've been around enough to know, if you keep doing this, I think you have a great chance to be here. And so I think part of my job is to provide that hope and that encouragement. Say, trust me. Like, not that it's going to happen. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not guaranteeing. I'm saying, if you keep on this path, I think this is what's possible for you. Because I think we've all seen those players that came as walk-ons and became great players, you know, because they kind of did X, Y, Z. So I think it's a balance, because you got to be honest and you got to, have some really difficult conversations, but you have to balance that with optimism and a plan and hope for them.
Being a woman in the NCAA as a head coach, what are the challenges that you experience that maybe us like males do not even imagine that you go through? Or maybe, other younger female coaches also looking for an opportunity, like what are challenges that they could experience potentially?
Well, people will disagree, I think, but I think being a mother is really difficult in our profession. And I think being a father is very difficult in our profession too, but I think it's a little harder for mothers. And I say that because, and that's just my experience. Other people could experience it very differently, but I feel torn all the time, and whether that's, cultural stuff pulling at me or, whatever, but that, especially when my kids were little, that was just, that was really a really hard time for me to kind of do both and work my way through being a college coach. That was incredibly difficult. And,
were there accommodations for you, understanding that part of you as a person?
My administration's awesome. I mean, if I wanted to have my kids in all day, if I wanted to travel with them, like I could do all of that, but that wasn't really what I was talking about. It wasn't necessarily, I didn't have the support. It's just that push, that pull of wanting to be great at both. Yeah. And sometimes you can't be, and the guilt, it was horrible. And the travel and all, just all those things, you're trying to be too many you just pulled too many places. So I think that's just being a female coach, I'd say that for me has been number one. Beyond that, what comes to mind? I mean, some things you don't know if it's gender or volleyball or, what it is, or maybe my personality, it's hard to dice them all out. I think what can be challenging is just how you're perceived by your players, because sometimes it feels like, okay, this guy can act this way, but if I did that, I'd get killed. I'd get just ripped on my student evaluations every year. So
I think that has to do, like one example is that a common thing in our culture is more of like, if a guy, screams, the guy is intense. If a woman screams, the woman is aggressive. Is that one way to kind of like look at how the double standard works?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. You can, just, if when in those relationships with your players, you'll get sometimes criticized, you feel unfairly. And not that I've experienced a ton of that, but I've seen it. And I think it can cost jobs even sometimes if people aren't mindful of that. I do think, I think it's changing. The world is changing. Coaching is changing. You're seeing so many more female head coaches, and you see those assistants really starting to now become head coaches. And I don't know the numbers. I know they haven't been great, but it just has the feeling of, okay, more women are choosing to stick with it and then become head coaches and come into leadership roles. So I think that's changing a bit. That's cool to see. I'm encouraged by that.
Seeing that there are more male coaches that didn't play the game, that coach, that female coaches that have not played allowed to coach. I think the pavement for male coaches that have not played at a high level is actually easier than maybe a woman that has not been involved at the highest level. Like I can see former star players, like female players, having a good opportunity, in the NCAA or anywhere. But if you have not been at that level, I think that maybe, and this is just an opinion, maybe, like it's not as easy as it is for maybe male coaches.
Yep. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, I do still see a lot of sexism in the sport, in sports, but also in volleyball. I still feel like I see, men maybe rise up to the head coaching position quickly and not criticized.
Yes.
Where if you would see a woman, you know, make that same trajectory, oh, she'd just get, you know, reamed. So,
Yes.
you know, I think there's still a lot of sexism in it, but I also think it's getting better. And I see a lot more women in leadership positions. So I think it's improving.
What do you do to work on diversity and inclusion in your locker room? Like what do you do to guarantee that matter? What are things that we can learn from?
Well, one is, for me, it's really important to have a diverse team, even starting in recruiting. And that's, you know, something we talk about with our staff. Like, we can't just focus on one type of person or one background, even though, you know, in some areas you might think there's just not a lot of diversity. You know, it's hard to recruit minorities in volleyball, but we have to do that. And by that, I mean, it seems like in some states there aren't a lot of minorities playing. So we have to make sure we're going and visiting the clubs in the cities where we can recruit minorities. That's really important to me personally in my program, is that we have a diverse team. So I think it starts there. And then, you know, we have to talk about it. And we've had a couple really interesting conversations with our team and small groups, maybe with our players, about how they see the world. You know, it's really interesting to hear them talk about it and where they come from, and how they see, you know, how they see things so differently from our point of view, you know, just because of who they are and how they grew up. So I think just talking about it and feeling free to talk about those things and being okay with being different and coming from different places, I think it's just important conversations to have.
Are your players, you know, aware and understanding of global citizenship, you know, in terms of that diversity and inclusion, and like throughout the NCAA and, you know, in college sports, how can we improve that? You know, me coming from Puerto Rico, you know, being on the NCAA is something that I think about every single day. And so like, what are things that you do that could contribute to that matter?
I don't know. I don't know that we do that great of a job of it. You know, we could do more. It does make me think of the, you know, and of course this takes resources, but we took our team to South America last summer, and we had a player from Argentina, and
she's a stud, by the way.
She's a stud. And, you know, having that experience of travel, meeting those other people, seeing and we actually got to visit Candelaria she's from San Juan, Argentina, getting to visit her hometown to see where she lives, how she lives, her family, I mean, it changed us. It changed us to have that exposure. I've been fortunate to be able to go to a lot of places around the world, and every time I come back from those, I'm a little different. You know, you just learn more about yourself, about that culture, see it from a whole new perspective. I think that travel to me is so valuable. I hope we can continue that. I don't know after this crisis is over, I don't know how that will go, but it's incredibly valuable.
The constant turnover in the NCAA coaching world is almost alarming. You seem to be really stable on what you have established at Iowa State Volleyball. Of course, the hard work that you put, you know, the way Hector describes you as an ultimate leader there. But what are some keys that coaches can actually do to create that type of stability that you seem to have at Iowa State University?
Well, I can only speak to my experience in that. I'm kind of decided the grass isn't always greener, you know? So when I've had, you know, maybe opportunities to leave, I just felt like, why am I doing this? You know, what's important to me? And for me, it was my family. Is my family happy? You know, can I support them? Do I feel like I have the support of my boss and my administration and my school? Are we living a good quality of life? And for me, I didn't want to risk that. If I felt like that was in a really good place, I didn't want to risk it to go to a place that I just wasn't quite sure if those things would all happen. That for me, that's why I'm here. You know, that's why I've stayed as long as I've stayed. I think I've shown a lot of loyalty to Iowa State, but they've shown it back. So I think we've been good to each other. You know, they treat me very, very well here. This administration is, I feel like I work for some of the best people, some of the best administrators in the country. You know what? I can't figure out why I would leave that. Why would I risk having that somewhere else? So for me, I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable staying where I've been. Now, you know, I have good resources and not everybody has that, and I get that. But I guess what I'm saying is, I think I've figured out what I'm motivated by, what's important to me, you know, and if I have that, I'm pretty happy. You know, I don't need to go chasing jobs. I'm really happy here. I don't want to mess with that.
Assuming that things go back to normal at some point, what are the things that Iowa State needs to do to win conference and, you know, and get you to other bigger goals that you might have?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you know, we've not won a conference championship since I've been here. We've been super close a few times, but we've never done it. So that's kind of, for us, that's like a bucket list. Okay. You know, when I first got here, we had like 20 things on our bucket list, and we've crossed a lot of them off, but there's definitely a few up there still. So how do we do that? We just got to keep grinding. You know, I don't think there's a magic formula. We have to keep recruiting as well as we can. We have to fill in some holes that we've had recruiting, you know, lately. We have to just keep at it, keep working. And at some point it'll kind of, you know, that it kind of comes in alignment, and you have those seasons where you can do something pretty special. So that's kind of like, for us, that's kind of the back of my mind. Like, that's kind of what we're working for every year. We're trying to do all this other stuff and take care of business. But that's the goals. That's the bucket list goals. And we feel like if we do that, then we have a really great chance to go deep into the NCAA tournament, you know, get back to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. Those are all goals that we have up on our board that we're talking about.
Top 3 things that Iowa State needs to do to get to that point. What are, like, skill set wise or stat wise, like what is it that it takes at that level?
Yeah, well, our best teams, number 1 and number 2, our best teams have had great setter, great libero. So if I were to say, what do we have to have? What do we have to do to be great? My best teams have been really, really good in that position. We haven't actually been that great sometimes in other positions, but if we've been great in those 2 positions, we've been really, really competitive, you know, top 20, maybe top 10. So we have to make sure that position is as good as we possibly can every year. So I'd say that's number 1, and that's number 2. And then, you know, I like having, of course, a big gun or 2 on the outside. But again, I will say our best teams have been tremendous ball handlers and defensive players. So we haven't always had the biggest guns, but we've had people that can, you know, dig the ball and put the ball up to the setter. And if we don't have that, I hope we have a huge 6'2" Terminator on the left side. But I also don't know that we'll always have that luxury. You know, you know, like I said, back to the beginning, we have found that, you know, the players that we get aren't always, you know, they're not touching 10-6. They, you know, we have to find another way to be successful to beat the player that is touching 10-6. So how do we do that? We have a great setter. We have a great libero. We have a team that just really is a great passing ball handling team. That's how Iowa State competes with the player that is 6'4" and can jump over us. We've got to do those other things.
And then one of the things that is really noticeable in when watching film about your program is that the shot selection of your attackers seems to be, you know, diverse. Like there's a lot of options, a good toolbox for each of the hitters. Do you spend a lot of time on that part of the game?
I think we do spend some time, yeah. You know, my husband, Joe, trains the outsides quite a bit. We have a great middle, Jen Malcolm, as an assistant that helps with the middles or trains the middles. So they spend a lot of time on that. And again, a lot of it's, we don't always have the players that are going to go terminate over the block. So we got to work around. And I think some years we've been really, really good at using the block. Our outsides just like really frustrate the other team because we work on it so much. You know, we have a setter that can put the ball, you know, just inside the pin, just in that kind of sweet spot. And then we have outsides that can just, you think you have a good setup and she's just going to keep tooling you. But again, if I have a, you know, 5'11" outside going up against a huge right side physical blocker, she's got to get really, really good at that. That's got to become, you know, almost automatic for her.
Right. You as a former setter, what are the things that define a really good setter at that level, Christy?
I mean, we just always talk about hittable balls, hittable. I'm not big on being fancy or tricky.
Simple.
Simple. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of like training, it's so much about get your feet to the ball, take the ball in the same spot every time. I'm big on making it look easy. I don't like the setter to take a decent pass and make it look like she had to do something unbelievable to get the ball there. You know, it's make your passer think, oh, that was a really nice pass. She got there very easily and made it look simple. So we don't spend a lot of time being tricky. We spend a lot of time just being really efficient and the same each time. Let's get to the ball and get there quick and take the ball in the same spot. And then once we kind of get that down, now we can start advancing it and mixing it up. But hittable balls and then decision making and leadership we try to spend a lot of time on that. So how to make really good decisions all games. And then all that leadership entails. You know, I think great setters have to have the ability to put the ball up where people, you know, can make them look good, the ability to make good decisions, and then the ability to lead.
Speed and power as the future of the game, it seems, now in women's volleyball as well. What's your take on that, you know, shifting your programs to that direction, knowing that it's so correlational now to winning at any level? Because I saw that you always have like one or two big arms on the outside, especially.
Yep.
I see you increasing the speed of the ball a little bit more, even you know, in the middle and in the pins. And then serving wise, it seems like you're pressuring opponents with more aggressiveness. So at least again in film, like what's your take on this?
You know, I think when I watch our teams play like 10 years ago, it's like, man, the game does seem quite a bit different. But I've also changed what we do depending on what we have for personnel each year. Some years I think we have great arms and we have really tough serving teams and we can really drive the ball. And some years we don't have very, very good servers and we have three people that have to short serve because no one can drive it. And so we keep kind of tweaking and changing things depending on who we have as personnel. You know, if you're talking speed of offense, we've never gone real fast.
Well, in terms of speed of like the players instead of speed of like the game itself, because of the speed of the ball, you know, related to power more than that.
I think, again, like as a coach, I think I've changed my mind on what's important. In other words, I see the value now more than maybe I did 10 years ago on an outside with a huge arm. You know, now, can I always get an outside with a huge arm that could be super powerful? I can't always get that. I mean, you know, to be honest, I might get an outside who's got a good arm, but if she can, you know, be a great passer and a ball handler and a great defender, maybe that will balance it out a little bit and allows us to compete with a more powerful team, a more physical team. So very few of us get our ideal pick on what kind of team we want out there. You know, you have to figure out what's gonna make you good. And you know, I've had middles that have lousy arms, and we teach them to throw the ball around a lot and push the ball to corners, and you know, because you don't always get your pick. You've got to figure out how to make each of your players the best they can be, and it can be very different for different players.
What's the end game for Christy Johnson-Lynch? Like, she has achieved so much so far. Like, what's the end game? Are you gonna be an AD? Are you ever wanting to be an AD somewhere?
I hate meetings. I absolutely detest meetings. So probably
National
no,
team coach?
my staff would probably say I like meetings, but I don't know. I don't have a plan really. I want to keep coaching as long as I enjoy it and
Yeah.
feel like I'm good at it. I'll keep doing it. If not, I'll be okay. I think probably a lot of my identity is wrapped up in coaching, but I don't think all of it is. I do really enjoy some other things. I really do enjoy my family. I'm a homebody. I love being at home and doing stuff outside and yard work and that kind of stuff. I love adventures. I do love travel as well. So I think when it's my time, sounds kind of sad, but I think I do have a lot of other interests. I don't think I'm all and only about volleyball. So I think I'll at some point decide those things interest me more than maybe coaching.
And you have had leadership roles, like even like in the AVC, as we mentioned, you have been in committees in the NCAA. Like, does that influence, your goals moving forward as well? Or does that improve your leadership skills for your own program as well? Like, what are those roles doing for you?
They've been awesome. I mean, I honestly, before I got involved in the AVC, I didn't know that much about it. I didn't really know that much about what they do, what their role is. So going through all of that has been incredible learning experience for me. I didn't know much. So that's been awesome for me to go through and just, I don't know, kind of increase my skill set a little bit. There's some things I had to do that I didn't really like to do or wasn't comfortable doing. So yeah, that's been good. I don't know. Someday maybe I'll be in a different leadership position, maybe not as a coach, but maybe something else. I have no idea. I haven't thought that far. But I do like, I guess someone else asked me the other day, like, what drives you? And I think what drives me is I love figuring things out. So I love problem solving. I love, I love each year when we get a new team, what lineup, what system is going to make us the best? How am I going to put these people together to figure out, to me, this problem or this puzzle? And so I think as long as I can do that either in coaching or in some other avenue, I'll be really excited and, I'll be ready to go. And if that ever stops, then I better find something else, because that's what I really love.
One thing that might look small, but is huge, especially at the NCAA level, is that, looking at your schedules every year, you are a master scheduler considering RPI. It seems like mapping what you want to do with your team long term, it's really important to you, and you emphasize on that part of your coaching. Talk to me about like the importance of that.
Yeah, I think, if you don't know that RPI is important, you haven't been in volleyball, NCAA Division I volleyball.
True.
You haven't been paying attention, because it's really, really important. So if I'm doing the best job I can be, I better get our RPI as high as possible. And again, each year it's a little different, but you better be strategic in your scheduling. And every conference is different. Who do you got in your conference? Who do you get to play preseason? All that stuff. But that's part of our job. I think that's part of our job, to be really good schedulers, because we're trying to put our teams in the best position they can at the end of the year. And that, if you have a young and experienced team, it might mean you don't start tough and you kind of ease yourself into that, but you've got to figure out each season the RPI game. Otherwise you're not doing your job as well as I think you could do it.
Christy, last words maybe of wisdom for all coaches out there, looking for an advice for someone as experienced and successful as you have been.
I think the learning that we're doing, I think it's all really valuable. We have to keep evolving and keep learning and growing. But you have to balance that with your own, what you believe is important, what you come to find is important. I think every coach has to figure that out for themselves. You know, what's important to me for my values and what's important in my team and how I train. And I mean, that's going to be very different from a coach just down the road. So you can't, I don't think you can look at another coach and say, I've got to do it like that. And whether it's technique or recruiting or leading or hiring staff, whatever it is, I don't think you can look at someone else and say, that's how I need to do it. You got to really figure that out for yourself. And you're going to probably make a mistake and along the way as you do figure it out, but no one can really tell you what's going to be the best for you in your program. So I think, again, it's a little bit of a balance for me. I'm always trying to learn, but trying to kind of incorporate it maybe into my own beliefs, and not just kind of taking it verbatim.
I just want to tell you that from my own perspective, what I take from you is how humble you have always been, no matter the success or position that you are. And I think that all coaches, that's what makes someone a master learner. So I see you that way. Please know that here at Eastern Illinois University Volleyball, we admire you a lot, not just as a coach, but just as a person.
Thank you.
And someone that always aspires for other people to get better.
Thank you.
And I can say that, of course, because Jose talks about you every single day as well. And says, how you have built that program because of the type of person that you are and how everything started from there. And everyone around you feeds from that. So again, thank you so much for doing that for so many people, maybe more people than you know. And I appreciate you taking the time throughout this hard crisis, to share your experiences. And please know that we're always hoping for the best for you and looking towards, the type of leader that you are and continue to become. So again, thanks so much, Christy.
Thank you. And I appreciate your friendship over the years. And it's really cool to follow you. And I love this idea that you're putting into action right now. It's really valuable, and looking forward to continue to watch you and keep up with you.
Thanks, Christy. And please know, for the English speakers, we're going to have the next one up. It's going to be Hugh McCutcheon on Sunday. So Sunday at 1 p.m. So please tune in. For everyone else, like if you want to tune in tomorrow, we're going to have Pellegrin Vargas, someone that was really successful in the NCAA, Puerto Rican legend, and will be talking to us about his game and experiences as well. So again, thank you so much, Christy. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're out. Sorry.
Okay.
Christy, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're amazing, Christy. Please know.
Oh, no, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
It was good talking to you.
Okay.
I'll be following you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, see you soon.